Okay, we are beginning. Can everyone hear me? Just doing a sound check really quick. Okay, great. There's going to be a slight delay as I deliver this speech. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to present the slide and then I'm going to paste the text because I think that after I'm done talking is about when you start hearing me on the slide. So, I think that will line up very well. So, with that, I'm going to start reading. And thank you very much. But also, I would like to say, may Olive Tree rest in peace. And that is very unfortunate. I've lost friends in Second Life, and it's very painful. So, I do all wish you very much take care of yourselves as you're grieving. Hello, and welcome to Immersivism, exploring the potential of a virtual art movement. I'm Kay Guillory, otherwise known in Second Life as Ameth, and I'll be giving this really cool lecture that contains video demos. So if you see this message and cannot see the presentation on the screen, please turn on media in your settings now so that you can follow along. Thank you. Thank you to Nonprofit Commons for hosting me, as well as VWEC and Val Librarian, and Rhiannon for all of your help. Very seriously, I'm fumbling in the dark here. Without further ado, we will get started. Okay, so hello, I'm Kay Guillory. I'm a writer and illustrator. I have been a professional artist since 2010. I write articles for Upload VR as well, so I'm a VR journalist. And which is a website that keeps virtual reality enthusiasts up to date on news and reviews for games and technology advancements. So you can check them out at uploadvr.com. Please support them. And what kind of art do I make, you ask? Actually, that was supposed to be included in the text. A lot. So here, I'm going to go ahead and show you. And hopefully the latency will not be too bad today. So I'm just going to flip over to the next thing. Okay, one of these screenshots is actually in Second Life. It's going to be the one on the right. So here we have a few different types of art I've done over the course of my life. The top left is a panel taken from a comic book I was hired to draw once. And to the right are several acrylic and oil paintings that are now all sold off and gone. That isn't every painting I've ever done, though, so you'll see more in the presentation later. And some really fun stuff that might really blow your mind, or not, depending on how much you know about VR already. So, speaking of that, here's a painting I also did for Red Bull House of Art in Detroit. Now, this one was part of a 2015 collection. If you notice, the green part is just the wall and it's not the painting itself, so it's just that bright, colorful part there. But if you look for a moment at this painting and ask, what's odd about it? What is odd about this painting? And you can just say the answer out loud if you think you have something. You just make suggestions right here. And I won't stop and address each one, but I'm just going to go ahead and move on and read the next part. The answer is that this painting contains a UI or a menu, much like the menu on your Second Life client. So it shows a person flattened in a one-dimensional perspective as if they are a game character. This painting is from a series called Virtual Girl that is about flattening the perception of women online and was the first time I depicted people online. I've shown at Red Bull House of Art, Con Artists Collective in New York, and Satellite Show in Miami Art Basel. I've also been nominated and won awards for my work in a horror anthology called Wayward Sister. So I've seen some success in my art career so far. But if I had a good art career going, that really does beg the question, what happened? Why did I pivot? And that is actually because I began to notice a few things happening around me. Now, in order to explain what this means, we're going to have to rewind a little bit. So these photos are of my life in Detroit. All these photos are mine. You'll notice the streets are empty in quite a few of them. The times you see empty streets are when it wasn't so safe to traverse those areas. But I was there either trying to get home or go to school, or I was on the bus headed somewhere. And you'll just, yeah, there's absolutely nobody. It's broad daylight and there's no one on the street. Something's quite wrong with that. So Detroit could actually be a very wonderful city. And I just want to say that first, for any Detroiters watching, please don't come at me. Detroit could be wonderful. At times it was actually very bleak. The picture to the left of this slide, by the way, is in a part that's very dangerous. Some of these photos were taken in broad daylight, and you would lose your life hanging out in these spots that I have photographed. Well, the picture on the right, that one's okay, but that's only because it's downtown and people hang around that bus stop. So if you're from any kind of city like Chicago or New York, or if you're in the Bronx or anything, you already know what this is like. So this is not going to surprise you. But also, Detroit could be just plain scary. This picture right here is one of the most dangerous places I lived in. This was my home neighborhood for a while. This is the New Center area of Detroit, just north of Midtown. People died in my apartment building in this neighborhood simply for being in the wrong place at the wrong time. If you wore something too nice and people knew where you lived, they would break into your apartment as you slept and beat you with a pistol. It happened to one guy, and he visibly changed after that in his outward expression. There are far worse things that happened here, and I cannot mention them in this lecture because they are terrible. I don't think I ever experienced such horrors of poverty and living at the bottom of society until I arrived at this point in my life. And until recently, I've been pretty poor my whole life. But funnily enough, it was here that I really began to paint. It is not because of this place that I began to paint. It was more in spite of it. I want to clarify that. But despite that, these difficulties, Detroiters relied on art to create new worlds and bring people together. So the city's art community is amazing. Detroit basically taught me how to build something from nothing. That's very important in this lecture as we go on. The picture to the left is from a festival called Theater Bazaar, which is made up of Detroiters who turn into performers in a 7-floor building from dusk till dawn, basically. It turns the whole building into a wonderland for Halloween. To the right is the first art show I was ever in. That's a poster for that. I believe that gallery is still around to this day. It did have to move, but it's still there. So while that was all happening, I started to consume media like Ghost in the Shell and Dot Hack, and let's not forget Lane also. For those of you that love Lane, that came out around this time too. It came out around the time of Dot Hack. So for any Zoomers that are watching this later on, everybody actually loved Dot Hack more than they loved Lane at the time. Lane blew up later, as far as I know. Everybody was watching Dot Hack. But anyway, so that was the thing. Some Detroit painters were also into imagining alternate timelines where citizens would find themselves in wilder conditions. The paintings that point to this theme aren't many in number. But here's mine exploring my home neighborhood. If you notice, this is the same building I took a picture of in that dangerous neighborhood. The person in this painting is walking with a bow and a quiver full of arrows to shoot anyone that bothers them. So by this time, I was attending community college downtown for painting. Uh, I couldn't afford much, and I was just trying to get an education. I pretty much was trying to get an education my entire life, and yeah, that was a very big thing for me. One thing my instructors in community college kept telling me: don't paint computer screens in still lifes. I asked why, and they said just not to do it and that it looks awful. Uh, but the thing is that I really wanted to. If you look at this drawing, this black and white sketch, it's it would have turned out really cute. I think that this would have been very cute. I think that my instructors didn't really know what they were talking about, but also it was during a time when the rule was you don't paint computer screens. That's just the way it was. But this is very important because it's going to factor in later on. But I just want to show real quick, here's the desktop also that this is based on that little sketch. So just the life that's teeming on this wall. Yes, it is worth painting. So later on in college, after I transferred to Wayne State University somehow through a miracle, I was trained to do blind contour drawing. And blind contour drawing is when you look at a subject and you draw them on your canvas without ever looking at the picture. It requires you to stare at your subject until you're finished drawing them and trust your eyes with what you see, which is another very important part of my upbringing and why I'm talking about my life in this way. This picture is of a local coffee house in Detroit. It's called Great Lakes Coffee, and I used to go by there a lot to do sketches. So this was one of the sketches that came out of that time in my life. So by the time I received the opportunity to show my paintings at Red Bull House of Art, I was using Second Life on the down low, and I was playing around with virtual photography. But, it was very silly because here I am, I'm becoming an adult, and it wasn't okay to talk about video games as anything other than entertainment. No one talked about their private life gaming online. At the same time, Sword Art Online was getting attention, and all of my friends loved it, especially the ones in Second Life roleplay communities. They were super into it. And we all just pretty much were hooked on it, and we were logging into here and we were talking about it. It was very on theme for what was going on, and I'm not very sure. I think about that time VR was just barely coming back. Maybe it was the days of DK1. I'm not really sure about the time period on that. So I quietly explored Second Life's art community, and I never talked about it. So clockwise from here, we have Patrick Moya, Club Cringe, which its owners are now active in the XR field. They do shows. They travel the world with stage productions. And then everybody knows Bibi Hansen, and she's with Second Front, and she does a lot of work here. But there's another artist that I'm going to mention also, one that everybody knows quite well. Don't worry, I'll be mentioning her soon. First, I want to talk about the fact that virtual art has actually come a very long way. We have roots back in the 90s. Here's Nicole Stenger, pictured here with her work in VR in the 90s. Each decade, a new immersive platform brings new achievements in design. And here we finally have Nicole Stenger, and then we've got Bryn O's work, and I believe that this field here is from LobbyCam. And Bryn became active in Second Life in the 2000s. So that's the following decade. So things were really popping off in Second Life artistically. So by the time I was joining these group shows, pictured here, by the way, is Con Artist Collective and one of their shows in New York. And this would kind of be the style that we would interact with. We would, put up our art this way, and it was just like this big open thing. I was just kind of wondering what was next for me. And it turns out that the answer was right in front of my face. This is a painting that I did for a friend for fun. I had a spare canvas left over for a while from Red Bull House of Art, and I wanted to give my friend a gift. We were both taking part in a Second Life art camp, SL Leah, if you know, I'm sure everyone knows what that is. It's a land grant program back then. We were both taking part in a Second Life art camp where the assignment was to think of something new to pursue. So here's where Breno really comes in. She is an accomplished virtual sculptural and traditional artist who's been making art in Second Life since the 2000s. You can literally open up the Places button right now on your client and see several works by her. When I showed her my painting, and I did this in 2016, she showed me this one, which I believe is done in 2011. This is her avatar on a canvas. It's just painted very roughly onto it. And that's when I just kind of had a light bulb just go off in my head. It's if two artists are doing the same thing, eventually many more would too. Not to mention the increasing amount of media that I've seen that took place in virtual worlds, and the casual way my friends my age and younger were accepting them. To me, it pointed to a movement that was inevitable. And I decided that my next project would be to research how far I could take the concept of painting virtual worlds. So I joined, at that time, VR Chat was starting to blossom as a community. So I joined it and I researched immersive worlds even further. Now, doing this is not very easy. You can see several pieces of art here that I've tried to make. They are not all the same style. The one in the top right is, that's one that I definitely painted in Second Life. But basically, if you want to make good art, you have to make bad art first. So you will make bad art during this time of research. You will make mistakes and you will learn from them because you are fumbling around in the dark. You are trying to understand what you are doing. If you don't have a path in front of you, you've got to make one. So if you want to make anything new, you'll have to fail a lot before something sticks. So eventually, I realized that blind contour drawing could help me illustrate what I saw in VR. Using the blind contour skill on a virtual subject brings weight and truth to what someone paints. So I tried giving it a shot. And this is the video that comes from it. So I'm going to explain to you as this is going on what I had so that you have like this written guide for it. Here's a video showing this process. You can ignore the words. I'll explain what they mean a little bit later. What we're looking at here is I put a VR headset on my face and I see a virtual tree. The canvas is prepped with yellow ochre already, and then I do a blind contour drawing with a painting of a tree with burnt sienna. The paint oxidizes quickly because I mix terpenoid with it. So now I can correct the lines with another layer with raw umber. Then I apply color to the rest of the work. This is an example of using alla prima, which means a painting that is done in a single sitting. You don't have to do this in one sitting if you want to. I just wanted to show that this was possible. The headset I'm using here is a Quest 3, but any VR headset that can access a world is going to be applicable for this painting method. You can use any VR headset you want. It doesn't need augmented reality to work. So here is the demo from that. It's very interesting, and here is just kind of how it turned out. That's from my TikTok. So the Quest headset was also improving with its pass-through ability. And Virtual Desktop, which is an app for the Quest, which lets you access your computer remotely, it lets people turn the right builds into AR by using chroma key pass-through. So I built a digital studio, and I'm going to play this while this is going. Okay, so in this experiment, because this is the next thing I did, I scanned the room with Polycam app on my phone. Then I import the scan into VR Chat, and I place the room scan inside of a green box, which is the green screen. Then I toggle the room scan mesh on and off with a simple toggle code. And because green screen mode is enacted with virtual desktop, I now have turned my studio into an extended reality studio through VR chat. I am no longer merely in VR. I am somewhere between virtual reality and augmented reality. As you can see, when you flip it like that, when you flip back and forth, it is utterly surreal. Even when I did it on my own, I couldn't believe it was happening. It is unbelievable, but it is the future. But wait, there's more. So here's a video where I invite a friend over for a portrait sitting. Now together, we create a cross-reality studio interaction. I'm going to play this video out on silent so that you can see the setup and what happens. I will chat with you in text until the video is done playing. This is why you enabled media. This is something you absolutely have to see. And I'm just going to sit here and I'm just going to we're just going to talk about this for a second. So skip forward a little bit. Here's my friend Region Storm in VR chat. Here's my friend Region Storm in her natural habitat. Here's Region Storm in my studio. This is real. This is not fake. This happened. I'm going to play out this whole video so that you get a good look at this, because this is unreal to me even as it happened to me. Hold on. Yeah, so this is just whoever's pointing at the prim and I just constantly see like this rainbow thing, please stop. I believe that's Emiliak. Thank you. Okay, so yeah, and you just kind of like pick up the canvas and you just paint them, and I did a blind contour gesture kind of test. Okay. Now this is the part that was very cool. So I want you to notice the hug and the selfie that's going to happen here. We're just sitting here, we're interacting, and as soon as like this camera, you know, she pops out a camera and we're sitting here, it just becomes another type of surreal. And then she gives me a hug, and that is also surreal. If you are on TikTok or YouTube, please support Region Storm. They are amazing. Yeah, so it's really, really cool. The hug is just like, we leaned into the hug and it just felt like it was completely natural. So that was very neat. That was a very successful experiment. I'm really proud of it. Okay. So while experimenting with paintings, I was also enjoying virtual photography and studying digital culture. Just like in Second Life, digital culture exists everywhere else. All these platforms are pretty much the same, but the technology updates. And so the people update with it, but some things just don't change. I wrote my findings at a site called the Metaculture, focusing on the trajectory of VR's music community. Later on, I shared my art findings on the same website. The VR music community that crystallized during the COVID lockdown especially its rave scene around 2020, went through changes that I felt were important to note for predicting how virtual creative communities might grow in the future. Taking care of these communities ensures its people are able to thrive. Because honestly, if you don't have people, you don't have anything. So by the time I stumbled across the Strange Pair Gallery, I had been calling this research art movement Gritism, which is named after Tron. But it was basically just including Second Life because we didn't really have anything else. And I was piecing together what it stood for, virtual life and its ideas, its people, its places. It felt like the impressionism of a new world. The fine art that fell under Gritism would be virtual worlds, could even be virtual worlds themselves. So you can paint a virtual world, you can make a world and designate it to be fine art, or you can, I don't know, there's a lot in there, but basically virtual worlds are not excluded from being considered fine art in this movement. They are an integral part of that movement. Yeah. It was a very nice early name. So the Strange Pair Gallery was founded in 2022 by Oz Pearsall. The community space felt so much like Detroit to me when I visited that I knew I had to give a talk there. And after explaining my idea to Oz about what I was researching, it was set in stone. The talk would happen there. So the talk that I had, it just gathered a bunch of, yeah, I fight for the user. Exactly, Rhiannon. The talk covered a brief history. It was the first lecture, so really it was about getting these painters together, getting these artists together, and informing them that, hey, we've got a backing of 30 years worth of history here, and we need to name ourselves because everyone is doing the same thing. We got to do something with it. However, no one had given this movement a name despite it existing for so long. So I urged the artists to vote on a name. So after a public poll was released, we chose Immersivism as the winner. The way that we did this, Oz came up with this idea to their credit. Oz suggested that we suggest a bunch of names, then we each get to pick 3. That way, everybody gets to vote for their top 3, their 3 favorites. And that's how we ended up getting Immersivism as the winner. So after all of this excitement, I really wanted to tell Bryn. I really wanted to tell the person that, really confirmed to me that what I was doing was part of something that was much larger. And that, I just basically, when I talked to her, I went off from Second Life and I went on this large journey of trial and error and failure and living and breathing virtual worlds and going through all this and then discovering the answer, just encountering this breakthrough and now victoriously expanding my line of work from that. I can now finally build a good body of work from it. But Bryn started my journey of research, including her vote in the vote was a must. So I was also very excited that I had finally managed to make something happen after all these years. And when I contacted her, she actually had a surprise for me. 4 years ago, Bryn held her own lecture, and it was called The Immersivist. 4 years ago, Bryn held her own lecture called The Immersivist. Yes, her dancing sculptures are wonderful. In it, Bryn states, and I quote, Virtual art may be written about in history books one day, and this may be the first stumbling steps to a new movement in art, not unlike the Cubist, Surrealist, Minimalist, Impressionist, and so on. Perhaps a movement may begin where the artists are called the Immersivist. Bryn literally guessed the name, but it was still important to have artists vote on it. So I think it's very serendipitous that we basically all agreed that this is what it had to be called. And that is how Immersivism was born. Great minds think alike. That is absolutely true. So, woven future vision, says Eva. Yes, exactly. So next, we've got this movement. What now? We need to define it, and we need to build it up a little bit more. So what is Immersivism? What is it exactly? Immersivism is an art movement concerned with people, places, and ideas about virtual worlds. Immersivist art can be paintings, sculptures, photography, 3D art, and virtual worlds themselves. So pictured on this slide, it is one example of immersivist art. This is by the artist Kikta, who depicted a memory of flying with their friends in a car in Final Fantasy XIV. That is actually a painting right there. So here we have another painting of another virtual world and another virtual memory. So we're seeing a lot of people turning to this type of art and just saying, you know what? Forget painting the screen of the computer. Let's paint what's inside the screen, what's beyond the screen. Let's just go dive all the way in there. This is such a tremendous thing for me. So the next question is, how does this help VR and immersive worlds like Second Life? The answer is that the immediate beneficiaries will be the artists who already sell their work. The secondary beneficiaries will likely be progress built around these artists. And Second Life knows what that looks like. That's grants, residencies, etc. Second Life has had plenty of these programs, so it is not new to any of the artists here. It is, however, new to artists in other worlds, and so in talking about immersivism, we have to talk about these programs and their possibilities with them, even though VR has seen some educational and residency programs that have to do with art already. But it's my opinion that in order to explore what an immersivist education would actually look like, in order for there to be a residency program and educational opportunities, immersivist education should have a curriculum that is based on skills that are a little hard to emulate. It's just my opinion that if you're going to have an educational program, let it be something that really teaches someone something. I am proud of merging blind contour with VR, and I think it can really help our art education to put someone up to the challenge to make them paint that way as an exercise. Putting on a VR headset forces you as a blind contour artist to truly rely on your eyes to paint and draw what you see. You cannot make assumptions about the geometry in a virtual world because geometry in virtual worlds don't often make sense. So you are forced to rely on your eyes and learn to unlearn what you think you know. And that's the power of this type of movement, is that it will make you trust your eyes, what they're telling you. So, in order to explore what an immersivist education would look like, let's take a look at a painting where I pieced together different skills I discovered during my time of research. So let's look at a painting process that I documented. Now, there's a map in VRChat where you can ride a horse around. Like, you can literally, pardon me for that mic bump. There's a map in VRChat. It's called Horse Canyon. You can literally get on the horse and ride around. For the record, I love Teagle horses in Second Life. To this day, I love my horse. I will ride around mainland, but riding in VR is a whole nother thing, and it's really great, and I highly recommend it. So what I did I decided that I would test myself by painting a very large painting. So, as in the first tree painting demo, my plan was to paint the rocks that you see on this slide right here. Here's some different pictures of some different ones right there. They're absolutely huge. If you don't know what you're doing, this can be overwhelming. You have to plan this in steps. So my plan was to paint the rocks that I saw via blind contour, then use AR programming, augmented reality prototyping, AR prototyping to complete the work. Shown here are bits of canyon I saw on the map that I wanted to paint. The following video that I'm going to show you, I'm going to play a bunch of videos side by side so you can just see them all. It shows me not only using blind contours to paint these massive rocks, but also using augmented reality prototyping to plan out the painting before I ever actually mark the canvas. When I plan enough, I still prototype as I go to test color ideas. And eventually, I end up with a beautiful painting. So we're going to look at that right now. Here's some paintings. Oh. Just going to put this all together. And as you can see, I'm going to take a little text break and just text this to you. So as you can see in this next slide, as I play them, there's AR prototyping to lay out where I want each major rock. You kind of have to like overlap them. Then I follow up by focusing on each rock with its own blind contour drawing. The two pictures here are between prototyping and painting as I go. You prototype, you paint, you prototype, you make rapid color decisions, you make branching decisions, and you take pictures and you compare them. And then you look at them and you think, well, I think this one's going to work out over here. And you just keep prototyping. You keep going. And I find the process to be really great. I love it. This headset with AR augmented reality has made my world so much better. And I will talk about Second Life's ability to do some of this in a second. Okay, next slide. This is the result, by the way. Thank you very much. Lovely. Thank you, Lear, who says the process is fascinating. Love this inside out look at the creative process. Thank you so much. I have a lovely I can't pronounce right now. I'm tired. Calligraphy movement in the preliminary markings. Thank you. This is it. This is the result. It's called Wide Open Spaces. It is a tribute to Horse Canyon by Improwler. This is 24 by 36. And thank you also, Buffy, for your lovely comment. Yes, it is wonderful. It's fascinating. So what did I use? What skills did I use? What can we identify from this? Skills that we use for this are blind contour drawing, rapid AR prototyping, and plain air painting. This only covers one painting process. Imagine several different projects together with different skills highlighted for one course. Also following this slide are two more images from a different painting I did. They are in AR, and here's the finished result. So I'm going to show you this next couple of pictures. Here's like AR prototyping doesn't always look pretty when you do it, but it's not about being pretty in the process. If it's pretty in the process, then you're done, right? So it's done when it's pretty. Now this time, I'd I'd like for you to guess what you think this painting is about before I tell you, if you have any guesses. Just very curious, and I'll read out some guesses as you look it over and you try to guess. Like, what do you think this painting is telling you? The painting, by the way, is called Portrait of a Femme. Zinnia says the moth is getting burnt. Perhaps. Does anyone else have any other guesses? Rhiannon says, looks almost a bit magical with a flame in the distance in her wings. That's a very good observation. We are in self-care mode. So I apologize. Oh, no. That was a warning. Like, keep your eyes forward. That's fair. Okay, so now I'm going to explain it to you. This painting is called Portrait of a Femme. And as in the last painting, there's a frame around it. If you notice, both of these have frames. Frames dominate this collection I'm building right now for paintings. I've got like these bunch of big canvases in my studio right now because frames are present when you put on VR headsets. They remind you the immersion isn't complete, much like the frame surrounding a window when you're opening a client like Second Life. The immersion is not full because it doesn't cover all your eyes. You're not literally within the space, but you do feel some level of immersion here sometimes. But the frames remind you that the immersion isn't complete, but if you connect with someone in a virtual world, you stop noticing the frames and the nameplates above their heads. It is the person who stands out to you at the end of it all. It is the person that you are connecting with. It is the landscape that you are connecting with. It is the art that you are connecting with. And when you connect, everything else falls away. That is the meaning. So, here are some blind contour drawings of VR avatars as well. I drew these with an iPad, so you don't have to do everything with traditional. You can just like put on a headset, or actually with this, I've done blind contour drawings of people in Second Life too. You can also do this in Second Life. You can paint, there are people that paint Second Life avatars, as I have shown you before. You can do this. With Immersivism, Bryn has already built out work with sculpture and paintings and virtual worlds. In my part of Immersivism, I have focused on blind contour and virtual reality, but Immersivism covers it all. So there can be different types of Immersivism. There can be different experiments. There can be different movements. There can be different types. They're already very different. The Final Fantasy picture is different from this, but it's all immersivist. And that's my message to you. So here are some other art programs I recommend for education and just trying out art. King Spray teaches you about planning large-scale murals, which is very important for people that maybe you can't get to a bridge or a sidewalk or something, or a wall. Maybe you can't get permission to paint a wall. Well, King Spray will show you how to do that, how to handle scale. Vermilion is good for oil painting simulation. Painting VR has all kinds of painting materials to try. Gesture VR is an excellent live posing tool for artists to do sketches from. Almost all of these are on both Steam and the Quest Store, so check them out if you have a VR headset and you'd like to get into this kind of work. Immersive education courses can also cover the art of publication around new subjects. Through the metaculture, where I was also writing about historical things that I noticed, Also ran a community zine project, encouraging others to submit art, essays, and photography to be published. To this day, there are people making zines about VR who cite me as their inspiration, which makes me really happy. Making these communities grow that nobody thought could exist in VR is pretty much all I could have ever wanted. I would also like to credit, there have been significant zine communities and efforts by the Japanese community in VR, so I want to also give them a shout out because they've really been leading the way all these years. Excuse me. So there's a comics project I did in VR as well, using what I learned about social platforms in VR to create a horror story as an exploration of terror in a new age. So Clout is a short, scary story about a virtual streamer balancing the demand for greater success in her personal life. It is based on the old fairy tale of the fisherman and the golden carp. Clout served as a return to comics for me, as well as experimenting with taking on stories that take place in immersive spaces. The research needed to make these stories believable is utterly necessary in order to deliver a sufficient punch. For reference, the top streamer on Twitch right now is a virtual personality. So yes, this is quite relatable to a whole class of entertainers right now. And to show an example of the level of research that you probably want to do if you want to write something emotionally honest about being in an immersive world like VR, or even in Second Life, because things can get really tough here too, especially in the fashion industry. You didn't hear that from me. Here's a panel, and these two panels directly follow one another. A woman is giving her friend a goodbye kiss on the cheek. Then she logs out and she sits up in her bed. The initial disorientation of time and space to her is sometimes what you feel when you log out of an immersive world and you're kind of jolted out back into your physical reality. So note the slight style change also that makes this a little more jarring. I did that on purpose. I wanted people to feel a little weird about, like, here's this one style of people being in a virtual world, and then you log out and here's a slightly more realistic style that's taking over. So publication projects don't have to, thank you very much, Ava. Publication projects don't have to remain in the realm of fiction. Nonfiction publication can also see success with virtual residencies. Yes, oh my gosh, Zinnia, the physical output of my VR art, the photos, the videos that you saw, those are real canvases. Oh, I'll get to that in a moment though. Yes. And also the photographs. Yes. All of it, physical output. Yes. I will talk about that in a moment. Okay, so this is an article I wrote for Upload VR. While writing it, I discussed the process with editors so we could all understand what deeper metaversal journalism looks like when it merges with a more traditional newsroom. Even though my editors are absolute experts, we were just kind of like exchanging knowledge and exploring this, deeper journey into live service game journalism together. So this is currently a part of my active praxis, and it is, it's pursuing stories like this to write about. The next generation of VR developers are social VR users. That was a really great story that I worked on. It was a lot of fun. So also, here is some photography, because photography is also included, and I just really wanted to cover that. You also saw some photography earlier in this presentation with a woman kind of moving fluidly through time with her glow stick. But note the irreverence here, the departure from Second Life style virtual photography, and how a VR camera can shift your perspective in photo taking until it becomes more indistinguishable from a physical photography style. Note the texture, the smears, and the imperfect framing. Virtual photography, with its difference between VR and games like Second Life, that means that there's a huge variation that can happen between them. Virtual photography can look like it can imitate a physical photo, or it can imitate a painting. It can do a lot of things, and that's very powerful. So here are some more thoughts as we start to close this out. Healthy spaces where artists thrive will not contain too much pressure on profit, nor so little that there is no opportunity to grow professionally if desired. Consider platforms with live building capabilities for hosting creative jams and residencies. When we keep the lines of knowledge flowing, each generation of virtual art improves, rather than going over knowledge that we have already discovered. This is the benefit of immersivism. It wants to keep that memory from 30 years ago up until now and beyond. It wants you to understand that you come from somewhere. You exist in a context, okay? Whatever art you make, print it out. And Zinnia, I was going to say that. Here we show virtual photos next to physical photos. There is no difference between a physical and virtual memory. Again, there is no difference between a physical and virtual memory. A memory is a memory. It's in your head. It existed. It happened. When you cannot find your way through a project or something is stopping you from achieving what you want, and this just kind of comes back around to my upbringing and coming from absolutely nothing, and personally getting to a point where I feel like I can literally do anything. Nothing stops the dream. I saw that phrase online once by a post by some fashion girly on Twitter, and it really stuck with me. So what if people don't immediately believe you when you say that painting an avatar is okay and is worth being on a wall as fine art? So what if the road to what you want is difficult? Nothing stops the dream. So keep dreaming and don't let little problems stop you from getting where you want to be. Also, please note, I'm not a lawyer and this is not applicable for committing crimes. So don't use nothing stops the dream and then go set a building on fire. Please don't do that. Please don't commit crimes. And then quote me. And Valibrian says, we believe you. Reality is in your mind. Exactly. Ice Guy says, virtual is just another dimension of real. I've always said that. Exactly. It's what reality, which reality. It's, as Kent Bai likes to say, it's not in real life. It's physical versus virtual reality. It's not, they're all real life. They're all your life. So this has been a lovely talk, and I will take questions if you have them. My work is all like on a link tree. It's at KG Paints if you want to check everything out. I will be building an Immersivist museum in Second Life soon, so please be on the lookout for that. I will let you know when it is up. Basically, the goal of this is just to have a permanent collection of art and encourage people to get out there and create. We are varied. We are decentralized. Immersivism has artists everywhere doing their own thing and painting whatever worlds they want. And that's the way it's going to stay. It is never going to be centralized ever. And just like the internet isn't centralized either. So thank you very much. Thank you very much. And now I will thank you very much, Buffy. Fascinating presentation. I very much appreciate it. It took 8 years of work. It took 8 years. Thank you. And I hope that if you see someone painting avatars, tell them there's a movement for that. And let's all thank Brino, who made this possible. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to cease streaming, and thank you so much. I am honored to be here. Thank you all. Have a lovely day.